Hello, and welcome to the Quiet Part podcast, hosted by Mark Hansen, where he explores the unspoken stories hidden in the quiet hours we spend at home. I'm Wendy McConnell. Hi, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, in the last episode, I was laughing afterwards because I admitted to the entire world that I didn't know how to say Hermione,
Yeah.
and I hope there's not too much judgment on that. I was mispronouncing a name I'd never read before, but I forgot that I was explaining to people that I'm kind of dumb, and I don't know if I meant to do that.
Well, no, and here's the thing, and I want to mention that when we mispronounce something, it's because we learned it from reading it.
Oh,
So it's actually the opposite of being dumb, right? Because you're
okay.
reading.
I'm listening. I like this so far. I like
It's
this.
true. So we have to flip the script somehow, but I don't know if I ever told you this. My sister lives right outside of Dallas, which is I don't know if it's close to that place you were talking about with the lazy river, but I read in her emails to me that that's where she took her kids, and I was like, "What? Skidlerbahn? Is that what it's called?" No.
Oh, Schlitterbahn. Is that
Oh, okay.
Schlitterbahn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Laughing at me. I thought we were flipping the script.
I'm sorry. So yeah, Scittlebahn is a very popular place in Central Texas. People love to go to Scittlebahn. You're right. You're right.
All right. So how do you say it normally?
Schlitterbahn.
Schlitterbahn.
So just take most of the letters out. It's mainly an SH sound. There's a lot of other consonants in there that don't need to be there. I'll be very honest.
Right. So reading it, you see why
Yes.
I had the assumption I did.
Yeah. When you see it and then you think of the word school, you think that you're like onto something. You're like, oh, I know how to say this because I'm using my context clues or something.
Yes. So we need to do that. We need to realize that the people who are mispronouncing things is because they read them, which makes them smart.
I like it. I'm down. I'm down.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, today I wanted to talk about the thing that totally nobody has ever in their finances, a little thing called emotional baggage. And this is really just a wasted episode because nobody has it. And now that we all know
Whew.
nobody ever has emotional baggage, we can talk about emotional baggage. And I wanted to bring it up because I mean, just quite frankly, this comes up all the time in my meetings with my clients. It comes up all the time. In fact, I've incorporated pieces of my planning process to necessitate that both spouses come to certain meetings because I know that they can be contentious or that they can be misunderstood, or I know that it's the kind of information that if I give to one spouse, if I give it to Peyton and he goes to tell Jordan, it can be misconstrued. It can be misheard. And then Jordan comes back to Peyton and she's like, he said what? And Peyton's like, hey, you and me are on the same team. We don't like Mark. Remember, we just decided we don't even like Mark because he's not on our team and it's all just because we were playing the worst game of telephone we've ever tried to play.
That like whisper down the lane.
Yeah, I've discovered that there are certain meetings, both in the do you want to be a client process, in the onboarding process, and in the financial planning process, where both spouses actually have to come. I have yet to see a time where the meeting is successful if both spouses don't come to some of these pivotal meetings. And so I thought we should talk about this because people are stepping into my onboarding process. They're wanting to become clients, and they're thinking that they can do this without their spouse, which I think is really highlighting something. I think a piece of what that's highlighting is that everybody's got emotional baggage and it's going to be represented in the finances, whether you say it out loud or not. That's not the requirement to take your emotional baggage, your carry on, and put it into your finances. It's actually already there. We're either shining a spotlight on it and we're talking about it, or we're not. And we're just kind of living in this fantasy world where people don't have emotions and our emotions don't sometimes dictate how we handle ourselves, you know?
Yeah. Well, you've just described my relationship perfectly. I do the bills, I take care of the money, and my husband doesn't want anything to do with it. He's hands off. In fact, at times in the past when I lose a job or something, everybody's like, "Are you scared, man?" He's like, "She does the bills. I don't get scared till she gets scared."
I don't get scared till she gets scared. Our house is the same way. Again, this is a weather and Chick-fil-A and Lego related podcast. I am the weather guy at our house. And my wife has learned, like, she's not worried until I start getting worried. Like when I walk out on the back porch and I stand and listen for the thunderstorm that's about to come in, that's when she starts getting worried and she's like, "Do we need to wake the kids up? Do we need to be doing something? Do we is there an action plan that's about to step in?"
Right.
Because in North Texas, we get some crazy thunderstorms and it'll be 0 mile per hour winds and then it'll bump up to 70 within, 30 seconds. And
Yeah.
it can be, hail as big as baseballs with the winds and the
Yeah.
tornadoes. And but all of that, if you've got somebody who kind of like has their hand on it and maybe understands a little bit, I'm not claiming to be the world's best meteorologist, but she's learned like I don't need to be really worried until Mark starts to get worried. And it sounds like you've got the same thing with your husband around finances. That's funny that he even says it out loud and he articulates it. That's great.
The issue is, he would go to an initial meeting to talk about this stuff with you, but then he would be like, "I'm good."
So even if I've had this before where a both people were there, but one person didn't want to sit in front of the camera, and I hit the pause button. I dug in my heels until both people came in front of the camera. Like if we're going to be on this meeting, we're going to be in this meeting. Because I just think it's super important. I think we need to be together in this. Otherwise, it's super super easy to be divided in this, and that's not fun. That's not a fun it can be contentious enough to talk about getting finances on track and how do we plan for this thing that's 30 years away because I totally can't envision it. And at least if your spouse is there with you, supporting you, making good decisions, making less than ideal decisions, that's a lot easier than doing it by yourself and then having to like take your report card home and show it to your parents. And then they're like, what are these C's and D's? Where did these come from? I thought we were doing A's and B's.
Right. Yeah.
So I think talking about just the emotional stress of money is where I wanted to start. Emotional stress. I think I say that. Wendy, do you even think there's a positive connotation to that? Can there be a positive connotation if I say the emotional stress of money?
I don't feel like there is.
Okay. Well, okay. So let's. We've talked about working out before. Is that stressing your body? Are you stressing your body to become higher endurance, stronger? Don't you apply stress to your muscles to make them into the form and shape that you want them to be?
So you're telling me I'm wrong again. This is what you're telling me, Mark. I see where you're going.
I didn't say anything, Wendy. You are the one talking.
Yes,
I
you're
didn't
right.
say
It is
anything.
stress on my muscles, and that is how we build bigger muscles and burn more calories and make yourself stronger. So clearly, I'm wrong on the financial emotional stress. So tell me, correct my way.
Oh, no, that's not how it works. No, I'm just going to talk about some stuff. I definitely do not claim to have my emotions under control or my finances under control. So don't worry. That's not how this works. This is not Mark calling out. I'm not declaring from my ivory tower that I've got it all figured out. This is trying to have a real conversation because emotions are real. But stress, I think we've learned about that word to only be negative, but it
Yeah.
can be positive, right? We talked in those cash flow episodes, episode 4, episode 6, episode 11. If you jump back just a little bit, we talked about how you're directing, you're building the banks, you're taking that raging river, you're turning it into the lazy river, and you're doing that by putting direction and intention on your household cash flow. Well, that is actually stress. It's just the good kind of stress. And when I say those things, you probably didn't think about it as stress, but it is stress. That's good. It is intention and everything. So while there can be good, I think we're mainly going to focus today on the bad side, the emotional stresses of money. And this is very similar to an episode we did recently. Making more money doesn't just make this go away. It can shout over it. It can drown out the emotional baggage to an extent, but it doesn't make it go away. Like having more money doesn't take the baggage and unpack it and put all the clothes away. It just makes you forget that it's there, and that's super important for people to remember. And that we are all bringing this stuff into our finances, but we can forget that we can't neglect it. We can get distracted if we have strong household cash flow. And some people kind of get blindsided by that. Some of the couples that I work with are almost, they feel blindsided by the fact of, whoa, I didn't even know this was an issue. I didn't even know we were supposed to be thinking about it. And the way it's going to show up in the different spouses, a working spouse might feel a pressure to provide for the family, right? That I go to work on Monday. What am I doing on Tuesday? I'm going back to work because that's where the money comes from. We go and I earn the money for the family. Stay at home spouse might have guilt around not earning, the exact thing that the working spouse is doing. Stay at home spouse might have guilt around not doing that, but that's not the point of what the stay-at-home spouse is doing. That's why they are the stay-at-home spouse. They're doing all the things that they do that maybe don't have a dollar sign directly attached to them, but are extremely important to the family unit. And it's the two of these things working together that actually creates the family unit, the family effort, the family life that my clients are hoping to have. But if
Right.
we don't understand that two people, two different baggage, feel completely different about the exact same thing, it's easier to drift apart than it is to drift together, right? I don't even know if you can drift together. Can you drift together, Wendy? Does that make sense? Are you always drifting apart?
Down the lazy river, you can drift together.
Oh, down the lazy river. Here we go. And I like this lazy river talk. That's one of my favorite things in the world is lazy rivers. That is, I am not, and my children will soon learn as they get older. My wife knows I am not a roller coaster kind of person. It doesn't fit into my Excel spreadsheet situation very well. It's not a, I'm discovering how type A I am more and more. And a theme park really sets that out. I'm very into like I got to do a lot of research on the ride before I know if I want to get on it or not.
Okay.
How are you about roller coasters? Talk to me about roller coasters for a
Oh,
second.
I'm way too old for roller coasters now. I did like them in the day, not the upside down ones. They scared me a little bit, but yeah,
Okay.
in my day, I liked them. But I like you. I've told you this before. I like to float. The
Mm.
lazy river thing is a perfect analogy for me. I live on the water. I live on a
Ah.
lagoon, and I literally just sit there on my float with my drink. And every time a boat goes by, I get a little bit of a wave, and I'm like, wee, and that's excitement. That's cool.
Yeah. Oh, the little rock back and forth. Yeah, it felt good. Felt good. Awesome. That's funny. Uh, now the emotional baggage that we bring in that we know is there. We pretended at the beginning of the episode that it didn't exist, but now we're acknowledging it totally does exist. When I do my regular check-ins with my clients, we're always talking about this. And I specifically try to help people understand we're having two conversations at the same time, but sometimes we need to split them up. So I say this part of the conversation is laptop open. We're talking about the math, right? The math of getting to retirement. Because the good news is that getting from here to retirement, if I just kind of sum it up, it's just math. Big calculators giving calculator answers. If the answer of the calculator doesn't get us to retirement, then we just change the inputs, we get a new answer. That's kind of the back and forth dance until we get to retirement. At the highest level, I'm not saying that's a specific retirement plan to follow. You might need more than a calculator to get there. But in these meetings, was like, this is the math. We're talking about the math. Then it's laptop closed. Close the laptop. Peyton, how do you feel about the math? Right? Jordan, how do you feel that for the next 25 years, we need to take some series of dollars and we need to put them into retirement because that's the long slow obedience that gets us to retirement. How do you feel about that? And it's okay if you think that really sucks. It's okay. Like we talk about it because that's part of the baggage that we're bringing.
Right. But, I think that, and I hope that most people know that that's just a necessity at this point. We're going to have to, and that's why it's best to just, get it out of your sight before you have a chance to think about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Talking now, we're talking about automating, and yeah, you take a process, you start automating it. That's like lazy river, capital L, capital R. I mean, that's the actual thing right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's with the clients that I work with are typically finding themselves 20, 30 years away from retirement. It seems almost like a facade more than this real thing that's they're going to try to make happen one day. And so it's sometimes it can feel really difficult to plan for a facade, but we have to talk about it because if we don't start today, we talked about that in previous episode. If we don't start today, we're giving up our last year of potential compound growth, which could mean we're potentially giving up our biggest year of letting our money work for us instead of us having to go to work to get more money.
Yeah.
So that's a balance that I'm constantly trying to strike with people. And I find this thing that's sometimes in the way of that. And that thing that's in the way is the emotional baggage sometimes of what's stopping somebody from getting started today. And that's why we're talking about it. And then if we want to jump a little deeper, so now we talked a little bit about the emotional stress of money. Stress can be good, stress can be bad. The stay at home spouse, let's focus on this person for a little bit. Sometimes I hear from this spouse like guilt and like dependency. And some people feel disempowered. I don't know if that's a word, less powerful, something like that. Sometimes my stay at home spouse, when I'm talking to them, they feel financially dependent on the working spouse. And because they feel financially dependent on the working spouse, they feel insecure about their financial future. Have you ever heard anything like that, Wendy?
Oh, yes. Yes, I think women have been going through that for a very long, long time.
Yeah, and I think I definitely want to recognize that. What I've in some of the families that I work with, the stay at home spouse is the man, right? So, I think this is a concept that might transition from gender to gender depending on who's in what position. But yeah, we can definitely recognize that maybe has been happening historically, and it's something that we want to talk about. But looking at that spouse, talking to the stay at home spouse, I want to just there's a little bit of like financial knowledge, financial know-how. I mean, you're not completely dependent on this working spouse. There's actually specific things that are afforded to a stay-at-home spouse that aren't afforded to other people to help you continue to prepare for retirement. Those are things like spousal IRAs, spousal Roth IRAs. An IRA and a Roth IRA are going to be accounts that you need earned income for. And if you're the stay-at-home spouse, you might not have any earned income. So that's where the spousal IRA comes in, is where you can actually use your spouse's earned income to make contributions into your own retirement accounts. And there's limits, and those limits change. Those are things you need to look up based on the year that you're listening to this in. But our system is not some big system that intentionally squashes down the stay-at-home spouse and makes them feel less than. There's actually specific things afforded to those people to help them prepare for retirement. And the main thing is that and not the main thing, a thing that we want to do, stay at home spouse, something I try to call out in the meetings is the things that that person is bringing to the family, right? A lot of times my families are doing homeschooling. This person is doing the homeschooling, they are educating the next generation. If there's meal planning or if there's something like that, this person's also running those kinds of things. Like typically, who do we think it is that's keeping the household in order so that when everybody's together, they can be a family and they're not scrubbing the baseboards or something like that? I mean, somebody is bearing the brunt of that work, and that's sometimes my stay-at-home spouse. And I like to call that stuff out and say, like, I get it, you're not going to this big rectangle that was built and then dollar signs come into the bank account every 2 weeks. Your life doesn't work like that, but there are things that you do. I try to make sure that people feel valued, when we're doing our meetings, because that's the laptop closed conversation. It's like, who cares what the plan is? Who cares about all of that if somebody doesn't feel good enough to enact the plan? I've seen that a couple of times. Yeah, super important.
Yeah.
And then flipping the script a little bit, talking about the working spouse, right? This person, I think we said it earlier in this podcast, Eva, just it's Monday. What am I doing on Tuesday? It's Tuesday. What am I doing on Wednesday? It's Wednesday. What am I doing on Thursday? Like, I'm going to work. Why am I going to work? Because that's what I do. I go to work and I provide for this family financially. That's what I do. I am the person who goes to the rectangle and performs the activities, and then these numbers show up in our bank account via direct deposit, and our home insurance and our life insurance and our medical insurance is all paid for with these dollar sign number figures. There's a lot of there can be. I guess you can think of that as there's a lot of benefits to being the person who earns the income, because it goes out. You're trading your time for money, then you trade the money for things that you want, and then you have the things. You have the insurance coverage, you have food on the table, you have the cars in the driveway, all of those things, and you got them with money. Um, but then it's okay. We spent that money. Now we got to go get more money.
Right.
And if we don't, there can be some emotional baggage there too, where it's almost you feel pulled away from the family. You feel pulled to not be where you desire to be most of the time. And sometimes that can like rear a really ugly head, because it's like, I don't even want to go to work. I want to be home with the kids. I want to play. We want to do, yeah, I want to do 12 games of Uno. That's what I want to do. I want to go to the park for 2 hours, and slide down the burning hot slide in the middle of the Texas summer. It's like, I want to do those things, but then what am I stuck? Oh, I'm stuck doing TPS reports because it's the first of the month, and we do TPS reports on the first of the month. That's what we do at my office. It's in my previous roles, I did have a lot of heartburn where I was assigned a certain level of responsibilities and I was compensated for doing those responsibilities. Well, the way that I like to do stuff is quickly and efficiently. And over the course of a couple of years, I turned a 40-hour job into, I don't know, 12 hours, 13 hours, and I got a lot of free time. But did I get to go home with that free? No, I had to sit at my desk. I
Oh.
had to go get another cup of water, go get another cup of tea, another cup of coffee, and that that really wasn't awesome. Yeah, it's like hard workers can almost become trapped
Right.
in the thing that they're doing. And then when I specifically look at and focus on single income families where somebody's going to work to provide for the family, well, they don't really get to just willy nilly walk away from their income because that's the whole family's income. And that right there's it's a good side to that coin and there's a bad side to that coin.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like if we give in to that negative side too much, it could really burn us.
Did you want me to say something there?
We'll have to cut out some of that silence. There's a long silence. What I've found in working with people is that if we come into a situation and we don't have any structure, it can be really hard to ever get to the emotional baggage. Most people have a bunch of stuff piled on top. The stuff that they want to talk about is what do we do with our finances? How do we do it? They think that's what I'm here for. I am here to help people figure out what to do with their finances. But if we just figure out the financial piece and then you are still secretly not liking your life because of the way that it is with the emotional baggage and whatnot, that's not helpful. So on the money side, the things that I bring to people, there's a framework that I present to my clients. We've talked about it previously. We're typically standing in place, theoretically standing in place, looking 4 years down the road. What do we think is going to happen? And then the structure that we're building alongside that is a series of investment accounts that should help most situations get from here to retirement. I think there's a collection of 5 accounts that a husband and a wife would own either individually or shared. Those are the investment accounts. And there's ways and strategies to move the monies between those accounts to get those 5 accounts ready to fund retirement. So if we do that, if we say there's a structure and then retirement is kind of not taken care of, as in we're done, we're at retirement, but we have a plan and a strategy to get from here to retirement. If we get all of that figured out, then we have a little bit of time left over, a little bit of mental space to get to the emotional baggage. And I think that's where the freedom really comes in because we start clearing out all that clutter, start taking those carry ons and unpacking them and putting away the clothes. And eventually they might, there's be smaller carry ons. I don't know. Trying to figure out how this metaphor works. Maybe stuff gets put away and it's just a little easier mentally to maintain the household because we've unpacked some of the financial baggage that we've been carrying around for a long time, didn't even know it. But now we've got a plan. Now we've taken away some of that mental load of it's mental pressure, mental like
Stress?
just insanity, stress. Yes. Um, if we can decrease that and we put a structure, the people that I've helped do that, what they find sometimes is like, man, I've got a lot more mental time to think about my family, my wife, my husband, to think about just where's our relationship? Where do we want our relationship to be? Because finances get put on the back burner.
Right.
That's where I want people to put the if that's where they want it, I guess. I can't force it on somebody, but if we can put finances on the back burner, there's so many more things that we can put in the front of our mind that we can hold in the front of our mind that I think are better suited to be there. And it's
Yeah, I think it would be more freeing to not have to worry about it, right? It would
yes,
free you up to do all other sorts of things.
yes, and when somebody I've had it multiple times where people come in and I'll try to ask, hey, well, what are we trying to do? What are the goals? And I say it different than that. If I just ask somebody, what's your goals? Nobody really knows what their goals are. That's not very helpful. But
I
in
wanna win a pickleball tournament. No.
it's I've had people come in and it's like they don't know what they want because they haven't taken the time to think about it. So the default to, well, what is everybody else doing?
Oh,
So, well, what everybody else is doing, if we look at typical American finances, are not the things that you want to do. Or certainly, please do not let typical American finances be what you ask me and pay me to help you do. Because average American finances, the way they are right now, can't handle an emergency because there is no emergency fund. Really should stop using credit cards because credit cards are not being used in the right way. We're carrying a balance from month to month. We're paying all of that interest, which is just sucking away at this month's household cash flow. The average American is just really not doing stuff that we want to keep. That's why we feel the way that we feel as Americans. Our finances are a little bit out of whack. Going back to the family, there can still be some anxiety around like job loss. We're one job loss away from no household income. We need to take that into account. medical emergencies. Those are things we can't even control. Young families, multiple children. Like, what do we do? What do we do in those situations? And we've talked in previous episodes about having that emergency fund, which is that financial backstop that helps you not have to worry so much about what if the uncontrollable happens. We can't take care of it in a way where you never think about it again. That's not what I'm trying to tell people. But I am saying there are actions and habits that we can have that make it a little easier to think about other things. And so what we tried to work through today, when I do not think we were able to get all the way through, we'll have to dive back into this topic later on. But just what are the other things that we bring into a financial discussion when we think we want to talk about the ones and the twos of going from here to retirement, but there's other things that we're bringing in. Today we talked about that as emotional baggage. A lot of people find getting some organization and some clarity to be really helpful. That's why I use a software called Asset Map. Asset Map is like getting a 30,000-foot top down view of your finances. Think of a piece of paper that comes out of the printer. Imagine your entire financial life organized for you in color coded boxes, and it came out of the printer. You could look at it and you could point to it and say, "No, Peyton, I'm talking about this." Now, Jordan, when I say that, I'm looking at this account. Mark gave us a strategy. These are the 5 accounts. We've got them laid out because we've taken Mark's strategy and we've enacted it. This is what it looks like to be living Mark's strategy out right now in our finances. It can be really helpful to have that. If you want that, I give it to my clients. I give it to my non-clients too. All you have to do is you go to the website and you can look at the asset map link. You click in there. It's a software, totally free to you. All I need is an email address of where to send it. And that might be something that can be helpful for you to understand what your situation looks like today. And if you want to go a little deeper on some of these emotional topics, if you don't enjoy the dollar sign conversations quite so much, jump back to episode 3. We talked about parental guilt. Episode 5, we talked about we had somebody on that was a home organization expert, and she talked about visual noise, which you might call junk on the floor or stuff in the closet. She called it visual noise. She was very forgiving about it, but she talked about organizing the home and how that could help us in ways that we didn't even think about. And that's kind of what we're talking about today, of just organizing our thoughts, organizing our mind, and how that can help us in ways that we don't even think about it. If you want to learn more about me and what I do and who I do it for, please go to the website, second-comma.com. My contact info will be there. If you'd like to schedule a call, you can get access to my calendar there. I try to make it very easy for my families that are busy and on the go. I want to be able to meet where you are. So we'll probably meet virtually, and it all can be done at the website. If you want to learn more about the specifics of how this stuff might play out in your life, I wrote an ebook just for you. It's called What the Heck Are You Thinking? It's basically about how there are no shortcuts from here to retirement. You either do the work or you don't. But What the Heck Are You Thinking is my ebook. You can find it on the website. Just look in the top right corner. It should say ebook. Go there. Give me an email address. I'll send it to you. I look forward to talking to you at some point in the future. And I've really enjoyed this, Wendy. I think that wraps us up.
All right. Well done, Mark. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening today. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with your friends. Until next time.